On a snowy morning, a severed hand was found outside the entrance of a house. This hand belonged to a 17-year-old girl called Mako, a resident of that house. Police were unable to find her body.
The severed wrist has been identified.
This news plays on TV while a girl is getting ready for school. Her mother's nagging at her, but she doesn't respond. It seems like this is a common occurrence in the household. "I'll see you later," the girl says with a slight smile and leaves the house. A while later, she arrives at her destination, which is not school, but a police station. An officer greets her, and this girl reveals that she's Mako's schoolmate, as well as Mako's murderer. The police officer is stunned, but seems to doubt her. To prove her case, this girl pulls out the murder weapon. This girl's name is Mizuki, and she's immediately taken in for questioning. According to Mizuki, she had killed Mako. She then cut off Mako's hands and delivered the left hand to the entrance of Mako's house. The hand was later discovered by a neighbor. Meanwhile, Mizuki claims to have buried Mako's body near a river. Using her statements, police managed to find the body. The weather at the time made it difficult to ascertain exactly what had happened, but ultimately the coroner determined that Mako had been stabbed multiple times in the abdomen, and that was the likely cause of death. Now you are a defense attorney assigned to Mizuki. It is your task to understand the truth behind this murder so that you can defend her in court. You ask the girl sitting in front of you to narrate the events that occurred, and Mizuki starts telling her story. According to Mizuki, Mako was her only friend. At a young age, Mako lost her mother to a car accident. It also rendered her father so severely injured that he became unable to work. She had to make ends meet by working at her uncle's ramen store. Meanwhile, Mizuki was brought up in a strict family and disliked going home. Mako was pure and cheerful and attracted people like a magnet. On the other hand, Mizuki was more reserved and hardly let anyone get close to her. Except Mako. One day, Mizuki goes to Mako's uncle to ask him for a part-time job at the ramen store. But it turns out that he's actually a creep. He makes an offer to take obscene pictures of Mizuki in exchange for money. According to him, these pictures would sell well. Mizuki refuses and stands up to leave, but he tries to force himself on her. She struggles against him, but it's difficult to fight someone much bigger and stronger. That's when she notices a knife lying on the ground beside her. She grabs the knife and slices his throat open. Yes, here she tells you that Mako wasn't the only one that she's killed. This was also something that she had confessed to when being questioned at the police station. As Mizuki pushes his body off of her, she spots Mako at the door. Mako isn't upset at all that her pedophile uncle is dead. She confesses that her uncle frequently took sexual pictures of her and distributed them for money. Mako hates being photographed and only tolerated it because her uncle was, after all, her employer. Now she feels guilty that Mizuki has been involved. At first, Mako suggests that the camera footage will be crucial evidence for self-defense. But seeing that her best friend is so shaken up, Mako tells Mizuki that they can keep everything a secret and that she will protect her. They threw the body into a well and deleted all the data in the camera. They then closed the ramen store, putting up a notice that the store owner will be away for some time. From then on, Mako and Mizuki were together way more often and even skipped school to hang out. But someone was following them around. These stalking attempts seemed to get more obvious as the days passed. According to Mako, this stalker is her ex-boyfriend, Yuki. Yuki is a university student who's smart and handsome and very popular with girls. Mako tells Mizuki that they broke up not long after they started dating and that he's been pestering and ambushing her ever since. Mako shows Mizuki an email that Yuki has just sent her. The email is titled, "I'll always protect you, Mako," and it contains a picture of the notice outside the store, as well as the following message. "You're not working right now, are you? Your boss is away at the moment. What happened? You know you can always count on me." The next day, Mizuki decides to follow Yuki. He seems to be having some sort of investigation of his own. going to even Mizuki's house. He also goes to the ramen store to look around. Afraid of him finding out too much, Mizuki thinks of killing Yuki, but eventually decides to reveal herself instead. She tells Yuki to stop stalking Mako, and he seems surprised. Yuki tells Mizuki that it's a misunderstanding and that he's genuinely concerned for Mako. You know the owner of this place, right? That fat old man? There's been some strange rumors about him. That he would bring girls here. That he's up to no good. Mako says she's fine, but she's been acting weird lately. Also, it's been a while since I've seen that old man. If there's anything I can do to help her, please let me know. At this point in her story, Mizuki says this: Yuki may not have been the type of person I thought he was. At least, his feelings for Mako felt genuine. I'm a little jealous of her. Jealous? I don't have anyone like that in my life. Hearing this, you are surprised, since Mizuki previously said that Yuki stalked the two of them. However, Mizuki then clarifies to say that she didn't actually see the stalker's face. This means that Yuki wasn't necessarily the stalker. After her encounter with Yuki, Mizuki had begun to trust him and decided to meet with him on her own. Mizuki, you wanted to talk? The old man at the noodle shop is no longer there. I killed him and dumped him in a well. Mizuki tells Yuki that she's killed Mako's uncle and that she's gonna turn herself in. She also tells him that Mako isn't involved. Hearing all this, Yuki seems shocked but keeps his composure. He says that Mako previously told him that she had been filmed by her uncle without her knowledge and wanted a way to erase the content. Since Mizuki has the key to the ramen store, she let Yuki in. Now, the ramen store has this laptop that Mako's uncle uses to store and distribute those photos and videos. The laptop is just laid out on a table, so Yuki begins to look through it. Well, I guess the rumors were true, he says. I've deleted Mako's data, but there are many more girls on here. Mizuki is just standing silently, and Yuki pats her on the shoulder to ask if she's okay. After this event, Mizuki planned on seeing Mako one last time before turning herself in. However, Mako avoided Mizuki for many days until Mizuki went to her house to find her. That day, I saw you with Yuki. What were you doing with that stalker in the store where you killed my uncle? What were you looking for? This knife. It has my fingerprints on it. You and Yuki are planning to frame me for the murder, aren't you? That's it, isn't it? Now, the following is an exact quote of what Mizuki tells you next. Mako was panicking. No matter what I said, she wouldn't listen to me. And when I came to my senses, Mako was dead. And that's it. That's it? But then you cut off her hands, didn't you? Yes. I thought that by doing that it would be easier to hide the body. But in the end, it was more difficult than I expected. I even thought of taking her body back to her house. Assuming that Mizuki is telling the truth, it would mean that she first tried to hide the body, then brought back part of it to Mako's house, and finally just straight up went to the police? It doesn't really make sense. Either this girl is the most indecisive killer ever, or she's still hiding something. If she doesn't want to fess up, then that's fine. You're just gonna go to court and tell the court she has a mental illness and that she's a minor and hope that she'll be let off easy. Right? Just kidding, you can't do that. That's because you may be a lawyer, but you're a detective at heart. You literally have OCD when it comes to making sure that every part of Mizuki's story lines up. But Mizuki doesn't want to continue the session, so you let her go off, at least for today. Remember that most of what I've narrated is just Mizuki's version of events. Should you trust everything this girl says? If so, why did she leave out details of her killing Mako when she was being so specific in the events prior? First, we don't know how Mizuki managed to snatch the knife from Mako without even getting a scratch, but that may be a small issue compared to the fact that it's not clear whether Mizuki stabbed Mako while trying to defend herself, or if she killed Mako because of some other reason. Remember that Mako sustained multiple stab wounds in the stomach, almost like someone stabbed her with the intention to kill. Even if Mizuki killed Mako while trying to defend herself, why would she then go so far as to cut off Mako's hands and hide her body? It could be that Mizuki may have lied about the events that happened right before Mako's death, which could possibly explain why that part of her story lacks details. The truth may be more sinister, and Mako's death may have been a premeditated murder instead of an accident. After all, there's no way someone would be this calm after their best friend has just died. Now, remember Mako's dead uncle? His body was found in a well shortly after Mizuki's confession to the police. The cause of death was also exactly as Mizuki had described. But one question arises. Even if Mizuki had killed Mako, why would she also reveal that she killed Mako's uncle? Well, actually, we don't even know why she confessed to killing Mako in the first place. It may be that she thought both bodies would be found eventually and saw this as a good opportunity to confess all her crimes. But that's just a guess. You don't really know what she's thinking. Now let's move on to another character, Yuki. Although he was featured in Mizuki's recount, it seems like he has no clear connection to Mako's death. And was he even stalking Mako? Remember that Mizuki told you that Mako and herself were indeed being followed by a stalker, but that she didn't see the stalker's face. So in our first theory, Yuki is an ex-boyfriend that's genuinely concerned about Mako, and someone else was stalking Mako. Mako could have been confusing them out of paranoia. The opposite theory is that Yuki was actually an obsessive stalker and had an unhealthy fixation on Mako despite having been broken up with. Regardless, he's someone that's been in close contact with both Mako and Mizuki, so he definitely holds some crucial information. Maybe you should consider paying him a visit to understand more about his character. He might be more involved than it appears at first glance. Just think about this question. Why would Mizuki kill someone that she claimed was her only friend? What would possibly make someone like Mizuki betray the only person by their side? Look, Mizuki has always been alone, except for Mako being her only friend. And Mako is pretty popular with her classmates at school, and even dates this really good-looking senior that has his own cult following. Maybe Mizuki killed Mako so that she could get closer to Yuki. But you know, there's also another possibility. Remember how vague this part of Mizuki's recount was? That's cause it might be that Yuki was the one who killed Mako. And maybe his plan was to make Mizuki take the blame. You have to admit that with Yuki involved, everything just makes a lot more sense. It would explain Mizuki's actions of turning herself in and telling the police where the body was buried. But you know, that's just a theory and there could be all sorts of other reasons as to why. People argue and fall all the time, and you know, sometimes it's GG's when you're arguing with someone unstable. On one hand, you have Yuki, who's suspected of being a stalker, and on the other hand, you have Mizuki. Just look at her and tell me she doesn't look like a sociopath. What I've just narrated are the first few chapters of a manga called Adabana. This manga is extremely underrated. I've practically never heard anyone talk about it. And it's surprising given that this manga is so short, which is like the perfect length for any manga. Anyway, the story itself is not insanely complicated. In fact, it's pretty straightforward, but also kind of beautiful. It's hard to explain, but once you read it, you understand what I mean. I'm not gonna go further into any spoilers, not because I'm lazy, but just because I'm don't want to. No, because trust me when I say this, I love spoiling things. But I don't think it's necessary in this case because the manga does a pretty good job at telling the rest of the story. Anyway, feel free to check it out yourself, or you can just make your own guess about what happened. Not gonna lie, it'll be pretty impressive if you can cook up something just from this video. See ya.